in the NFL that we're going to talk about. This one opened up today. Another one of those that were like looked at my phone and goes, "Wait, what?"
Yeah. That was
And
my
that is
reaction too when you
Pete,
sent that to me.
and that is Pete Carroll is out as the Seattle head coach. My instinct. So the first thing I did when I saw this, I pulled up my computer because I was working on my computer at the time. I Googled Pete Carroll, and the first thing that came up was tweets from yesterday and 2 days ago of press conference quotes of him saying, "I plan on coming back next year." Maybe not word for word, but that was pretty much the gist of the quotes. And then you get this today. He's out and he's going to be basically transitioning to a role into the front office. I think what happened is Seattle said, "Hey, we love you. We want you to go, but we don't want to fire you. So how about you just go to the front office and save us all embarrassment?" That's kind of what I think happened, which is crazy, especially considering the last couple of years. I mean, just think of the last 2 seasons alone
Yeah.
with this team. They traded away Russell Wilson, and everyone's like, "Well, Seattle's going to be rebuilding." And then they make the playoffs last year out of nowhere with Geno Smith at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
This year, they're literally in the playoff race until the last week of the
Last game.
season.
Yeah.
So it's just crazy.
There was another I guess comparison, and not that we watch it, but in the NBA back a couple years ago, Boston's coach, I can't, is it not Brad Stevens. Who was that
Well,
guy?
Brad Stevens was let go, but I don't think that's who you're talking about either.
No, someone, they asked him to pretty much move into the front office and get replaced, basically. But I can't think of their name right now.
I'm pretty sure Brad Stevens got promoted to like GM or president or something like
That's
that. So
okay. Yeah. I didn't think he got let go. I think it's kind of similar thing with Pete Carroll. Um, they kind of asked him to move into the office administration, whatever you want to call it.
yeah, I thought you were talking about somebody else because the Celtics, I think, fired the coach.
No,
Like,
that was for off the court issues.
oh, okay, yeah, that was
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, yep, it was
Yeah.
yeah. So just because we have a lot of these coaching changes going on here, we're not going to spend too much time on any of them. But your first instinct, who is taking over in Seattle?
I honestly couldn't tell you. Um, Only because it's a very new thing, and I haven't even thought about who would want to go out there and try to fill the shoes of Pete Carroll.
So I'm kind of getting vibes of 2 years ago, I think it was, with Tampa Bay when it was Bruce Arians. They basically did the same thing with Bruce Arians and said, "Hey, thanks for your service. How about you just come up in the booth with us and watch the games from the president's booth?" And he's like, "All right." And I'm kind of getting those vibes. So then you think, well, there's really nobody on Seattle staff right now that,
Yeah, I can't think of anyone that
yeah.
would get instantly promoted.
I mean, I couldn't tell you who the coordinators are in Seattle, but that means they're not being linked to any head coaching jobs. So that means the industry probably doesn't see them as candidates right now.
Right.
So then you think of past people in Seattle, and there's a defensive coordinator down in Dallas right now that was in Seattle, and he's got head coaching experience. And that,
Hmm.
of course, is Dan Quinn. That right away, my mind's like, that's where Dan Quinn's going.
That makes sense.
Like,
Yeah,
it
I
makes
could
so much
see that.
sense.
Yeah.
That is my pick for Seattle. Again, well, first reaction again. So the NFL changed rules, thankfully, because it was getting a little ridiculous. You cannot interview the coaching candidates until after the divisional round, and which is a good thing because what was happening was basically a team would be going to the playoffs. So the Lions, for example, with Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson is going to get a head coaching job this cycle. If he doesn't, I'll be shocked. So what would happen is, for example, the Seahawks would call up the Lions and Ben Johnson and say, "Hey, we want to interview. Let's do it the Friday." So he's interviewing the Seahawks on Friday and then coaching the Lions on Sunday, and basically planning for a playoff game in 5 days or
Right.
6 days, whatever.
Yeah.
and then also preparing for an interview.
Yeah.
No, that's not fair for the Lions or any other team that scenario's happened to. So now what they're doing is the teams are basically now saying, okay, we want to interview Ben Johnson. The Commanders, for example, I know for a fact they've reached out to the Lions saying, hey, we want to interview Ben Johnson. And the Lions are like, okay, by the way, the Lions can't say no to that.
Right.
So now they're scheduling the interview for 2 weeks down the road. So now Ben Johnson can focus on this week's game, and then maybe like a little bit here and there working on his pitch for Washington and his interview instead of trying to do full time both. So I like the new